2014 Godzilla is certainly a movie. It's not really viewed as the worst Godzilla movie. God knows there's a lot of competition for that title. But it's not really seen as one of the better ones, like Shin Godzilla or the most recent one, Godzilla Minus One. A movie that also made people once more discuss other entries in the franchise, such as 2014. And with that tension, some criticism also came. With some of it, I agree. The movie is a bit rough around the corners. With some of it, less so. But there's one thing in particular that people complain about that I actually believe makes 2014 Godzilla stand out as a true sequel. Something it does right that no other Godzilla movie does. Something that makes 2014 Godzilla the king of the monsters. I'm sorry. The original Godzilla movie was more than just a movie about a giant lizard destroying the scenery. And it's here that a lot of Godzilla movies already fail as sequels, because they aren't really about anything other than that. The original Godzilla was an embodiment of nuclear fear. It's important to understand that people back in '54 didn't see nuclear technology in the same way we do, in more ways than one. Back then, mutually assured destruction wasn't really a thing. For a while, nuclear power was a fairly one-sided deal. The US and its allies against anyone else, really. It was a power they had, and they showed they were more than willing to use. I fear all we have done is awaken the sleeping giant and filled him with terrible resolve. That's what the Japanese officials said about the US even before they had nukes. So there should be no surprise that 10 odd years after the world sees the power of nuclear weapons, you also get movies about giant monsters destroying the cities. Shin Godzilla and Minus One both still play into these themes. But that in itself is the problem. One piece of criticism I often hear about 2014 is that Godzilla is kind of the good guy, which isn't really as it should be. First of all, realistically, he really isn't. He causes more than enough death and destruction for that to not really be the case. You could say that some of the damage is justifiable, but plenty of it is not. Though I do realize that a lot of these comments are just hyperbolas. What they're really pointing at is that Godzilla here is not as purely evil or malicious as most other adaptations have him be. Here he is very indifferent as far as humans are concerned. And this is probably the point where I should be making it very clear that I'm strictly talking about the 2014 movie. I won't go into how much of a good guy he is in the Monsterverse sequels. All I'm saying is limited to this one, and as I was saying, he's rather indifferent. But I view that as an important part of why that movie is a true heir to the original. In the original as well as Shin and Minus One, radiation plays at least some part in the creation of the monster. Some creature gets mutated into the monster attacking the cities. In 2014, radiation simply attracts the monsters. We didn't create them. We didn't mutate them. They were here eons before us, and they will likely still be here long after we're gone. We simply steered those monsters into a path unfavorable for us. We didn't even attract their wrath. Their actions do not even take us into account. They just happen to be doing something we are not happy about. The original movie was about even more than nuclear fear, specifically. It was the manifestation of the fear of the public at the time. But modern audiences aren't really scared of nuclear energy in the same way they were back in '54. Even the people who are afraid that nukes are gonna be used to destroy the world look at the matters with more disgust than fear. A disgust for human stupidity and lust for power that would bring us to such a situation. It's less about powerlessness in the face of a giant monster. It's a sort of disdain. But there is, however, a different fear currently on the minds of many people. Something that many may disagree on in principle or detail, but regardless of opinion, it is still on the minds of many people. And that is climate change. You may have your own distinct opinions about it, and that's a can of worms I'm sure as shit not gonna open. I'm just here to talk movies and Japanese cartoons. But you likely still did at least think about the subject to some degree. I'm sure not everybody is all doom and gloom about it, but probably not everybody was all doom and gloom about the nukes either. And even regardless of that, it's still much more so our generation's fear, equivalent to how people used to feel about nukes. In the 2014 movie, Godzilla was not really affected in any way by nukes. He's merely attracted to them. He is an ancient being indifferent to our existence. Some say he's the good guy because he deals with the other monsters, but he doesn't do it for us. None of the monsters really care about us, kinda like climate change. They hold no love nor malice for us. Climate change isn't trying to kill us, it's simply a set of negative repercussions, at least in part happening due to our actions. And in some sense, I actually think that can be even more terrifying. Being killed by a force you can see clear as day, while it doesn't care about you or it might not even know you exist. Now that's a monster. So this critique people have of Godzilla not being straight up evil is something I view as needed for it to be a true sequel to the original. Even though on the surface that results in Godzilla acting differently than in the original, I still believe it's the correct result of the same formula just applied to modern audiences. He did change, but that's because the audience has changed, and he is meant to reflect something about the audience, not exist in a void. You may dislike that because you simply like the original for what it is, but the original is still there. This change validates the existence of the movie in my eyes. It follows the same core principle but arrives at a different result, which I think is good. Because if I wanted to watch the original, I would just go watch the original.